Officials have been in the States. The US-Africa Summit has now wrapped up in Washington. 45 African heads of state were hosted by US President Barack Obama to discuss trade and business opportunities. South African President Jacob Zuma has played down suggestions that America and China are vying with each other to curry favour with African leaders. Africa, of course, home to 6 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. And the US has been behind China and even Europe in gaining better access to the markets and swathes of young consumers who are getting richer. Zuma says Africa is open for business to whomever wants to trade with it. On the summit's final day, the US president unveiled a security governance initiative to strengthen Africa's capacity to better deal with extremist threats on the continent. Obama says this will help Africa to shore up its economic achievements.
We'll work together today.
President Zuma described the deliberations as vibrant, with strong commitments on AGOA's renewal, new trade and investment deals across sectors, and a strengthening of Africa's security.
Africa is opening up, is the market and the region that is opening up. And therefore those who want to invest, Africa is open. And Africa is not going to be determined by somebody. Don't go to this one, go to that one. Africa says, here we are ready to do business. And whoever is ready to do business with Africa must come into business with Africa.
The summit announced public and private investments in business, agriculture and health development totaling $37 billion. There was also strong financial support for the continent's new rapid response standby force, expected to launch in October.
We also agreed to make significant new investments in African peacekeeping. The United States will provide additional equipment to African peacekeepers in Somalia and the Central African Republic. We will support the African Union's efforts to strengthen its peacekeeping institutions. And most importantly, we're launching a new African peacekeeping rapid response partnership with the goal of quickly deploying African peacekeepers in support of UN or AU missions.
President Obama called the event extraordinary, while President Zuma endorsed a fresh calibration in the US relationship with Africa. Leaders agreed that the summit would become a recurring event, with the next meeting expected before the end of President Obama's term of office. Shervin Bricepies, SABC News, Washington.
Well, to discuss further, we're now joined by Catherine Mokakera from the South African Institute of International Affairs. Thank you for joining us. Catherine, was this about the US trying to play catch-up, especially with China, and also about Obama's legacy? Because he said again he's a man of the African soil, but he has been accused of snubbing Africa a little bit in his first term.
I think it's definitely a reassertion of the US's role on the continent, because they have lost ground in recent years. The European Union as a bloc remains Africa's most important partner, if you want to look at it in that way. And China, of course, has been gaining rapidly in second place. The US has not really recovered, certainly in trade terms, since the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. There's been a much slower pickup, if you like, in trade and investment between America and Africa since the big dip of those years. And I think that this is, re-establishing the importance of the US. It remains the world's biggest consumer market. They are an important player. And of course, there is an aspect of seeking to position Obama in his second term with regards to foreign policy initiatives that are positive, if you like. And I think that the last 3 days has been a relatively optimistic, positive atmosphere coming out of Washington.
What practically comes out of this? Because it sounds very good, 33 billion or 37, depending which measure you look at, in investments. But this money is not being handed over. No. Is this just US companies that may have picked up on those attractive investment opportunities anyway?
Yes, I think it's a combination. I think we've got US government funding coming into certain initiatives. As you said, in the lead up to this, there's the security aspects, which is coming from the government directly, so more equipment going into peacekeeping operations on the continent, a greater commitment to development of security apparatus under the African Union. So that's a government commitment, if you like. And we've seen also the US government commit quite a big amount of $300 million a year into the Power Africa project for development
that
of electricity.
That does sound good, to double access to energy. So that wouldn't have happened naturally.
No.
Is that a real drive?
That's a big push, and that is probably going to be President Obama's real legacy, if you like. You had the Millennium Challenge Corporation under President Bush, which put a lot of investment from the US into infrastructure development on the continent. Under President Clinton, we had the African Growth and Opportunities Act come for the first time in 2000. So for the last few American presidents, you've seen sort of one or two big legacy projects for Africa. And I think that for President Obama, he's had a focus in his first term on food security and agriculture issues. And now we're seeing Power Africa, so the energy sector coming through.
Is this an indictment on Africa, that we're not powering up ourselves? He even spoke about facilitating trade between African countries, and this is something that we should be doing for ourselves. It's often said it's easier to export to Europe than up the continent.
Yeah.
Should we welcome this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we should welcome it, but we should also be very conscious that if we are to be in a partnership with a country like America, then we need to get our own house in order so that we come from a position of strength. Because otherwise, some of the fears that people have voiced about this summit, which is that this is the US dictating to Africa about governance, about democracy, about human rights, could play out. We have to come into any discussions with partners like the United States from our own perspective of what do we want for economic development on the African continent, and how do we best think that can be achieved, and then how can third parties help us? I think we saw more of that.
Well, let's end with that, because our main interest was AGOA, that act that you're talking about that gives us preferential access to US markets. I don't know what happened behind closed doors. I think it'll come out. But a lot of talk of the US asking for concessions, that they're worried that we're sort of protecting our economy, cutting investor contracts. Our government and even Stiglitz has said that's a good thing. What if we want to deepen BEE? We can't be beholden to foreign investors. Are we achieving that balance of independence and strength against giving in to the likes of the US?
I think certainly South Africa is achieving that balance right now. I think that we can do better in communicating about some of the things around our investment climate. So some of the changes that are on the books at the moment in terms of regulatory reform, for example, for immigration, as well as the foreign direct investment bill that will be in Parliament shortly. I think we need to be clear about how we communicate that with the rest of the world, more than actually the actions we're taking.
So to create certainty. Thank you so much for your time. That was Catherine Mokakera from the South African Institute of International Affairs.